Okay, in this tutorial, we're going to start clean with Adobe Animate 2020, and we're going to learn simple button interactions to make interactive things happen on the screen. So when you first open Adobe Animate, you'll be presented with a screen that looks something like this. And you can choose different types of templates to work with. We're going to hit Canvas right here. And so you click on that, or double click on it, and it's going to open up a canvas, and it's going to be 550 by 400 pixels by default. You can change this if you like to be any size you'd like. You could also change the color of this as well, this background color. Now I'm going to click on the timeline here in the little timeline tab, because we're going to be making things happen on a timeline. So we're going at 24 frames per second, and these are frames. So your basic buttons here for control, your tools, are on the left. Select. You have a transform tool for whatever you write, you create, a polygon tool, some paint brushes and different shapes and lines and text, and eraser and fill and eyedropper, and a hand tool for moving things around, and a zoom tool for zooming in and out. And we'll kind of use these tools as we go along, so I won't explain each one. It's pretty similar to something like Photoshop or other Adobe programs. So let's try making something and then activating it to do something. So I'm going to take our rectangle tool right here. Looks like a rectangle. Click on it and click and drag a rectangle. Now, if I don't like that color, let's say that's a little bit too light, I can take my selector tool and select it. And you'll see here in the properties, this is the fill color, which is what it is. It's just a fill. There's no stroke in this particular case. And change it by clicking on it to some new color, like this dark blue color. That's maybe better. Now let's make this do something. Let's make it change into a different shape. Let's make it morph. So I'm going to right click on this first keyframe right here. When it has a little dot on the frame, it means it's a keyframe. If there's no dot, it just means it's a blank frame. There's nothing new that's going to happen there. It's like an in-betweeny frame. Anyway, so I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say create shape tween. What that's going to do, it's going to give you 1 second of tween by default, which means that whatever is going to happen is going to happen in 24 frames or 1 second. You don't have to have it be that length. You can drag this out if you'd like, the keyframe, and make it whatever length you want. And so I need to make something new happen. Right now, nothing new is happening, so you don't see any shape changing at all. So at frame, whatever frame that you've selected here to be your last frame, let's make something new happen. And the way you do that is you delete whatever is there by hitting your delete key, make it go away, and draw something new. Like maybe I'll take this polystar tool, kind of a multigon, and kind of make something new be there. And so now if I take this playhead that shows up and go back and forth, you'll see it morphs into something new. I could even, we could change the color of that as well. We can do other things with it, which we'll do in a little bit. So it morphs into something new. Now that's pretty easy for Adobe Animate to calculate. So things that are shapes that are more complex won't have a nice clean morph like that. It'll kind of scribble in between. So now let's do something like make a button to activate it, because right now, if I want to see what this is going to look like in a web page, I can hit Command Enter, and it makes a web page, and you'll see it does the morph and then loops back to the beginning and just keeps looping around over and over and over again. So we need to now make some interactivity happen. So it goes to this output window, and I'll explain this in a moment, and we'll go back to our timeline. So let's make a button that will activate this morphing. So everything that we want to do, like make a button or make another thing happen or bring in some other object, has to be on its own layer. And the layers are this little plus sign right here. That makes a new layer. And when you get a whole bunch of layers, you can put them in a folder. Like if I have a whole bunch of buttons, I'll make a button folder. Then I'll make a morph folder. I'll make some other folder. So I better label this morph layer first of all. I can double click and say that it's a morph. Then I'll hit enter. So I know it's my morph layer. It's important to label things. Otherwise, you're going to get very confused very quickly. And it's also a good idea that when you're done doing something on a layer that you lock it, because sometimes when you select things, it will select the wrong layer and then mess you up. So if you lock it, you don't have to worry about accidentally selecting it. And you can always unlock it if you need to later. So now I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to say that this is my morph button layer. I'll just make a B for button. So that's going to be my morph button layer. So let's make that morph button. So I'll take, let's say this oval tool. We'll use different tools. And I don't want it to be blue. You see here's the fill and stroke. It has no stroke and a blue fill. I'm going to make it a yellow button. So I'll do this right away. I can always select it and change it, but may as well do it in the beginning. And I will make my oval for my button. And let's put some text in it so I know that's what's going to happen. So I'll click my text tool right here with a big T. And I don't want my text to be yellow. Yellow on yellow I won't be able to see. So I'll make my text black and click there. And I'll put the word morph. And I'll click the selector arrow right here, so it's nothing. And then I can move it around if I want. You can see if as I roll over it, I can move it around. And as you see, it's kind of moving. It's kind of trying to grab onto things. I can also use my arrow keys, my up, down, left, right arrows, and kind of do more accurate movements like that. So now to turn this whole operation here into a button, the yellow oval as well as the text, I have to select the whole thing. That's going to be a button by drawing a little box around it. And under modify, I could then say convert to symbol. So this is how you make a button. Modify, convert to symbol. Gives you this window right here. And it is already assuming I want to make a button. That's good. But I need to label it. So I'm going to say this is the morph button. And I'm going to hit OK. Now here's something that's really important. You'll see in the properties here, it says it's a button. It says it's an instance of morph button, but it's got a blank instance name. It's really actually super important that you give it an instance name, believe it or not. And the reason why is because if you don't, Adobe Animate tends to not function right. So you have to give it an instance name. So you can make something up. I'm just going to, I'll call it morph button. So it's going to be morph button instance of morph button. I mean, that'll work. That's fine. So I've made that instance. So important that you do that. Don't forget to do that. Now we've got a button, but it doesn't do anything. So right now what I'd like, this is what I want to happen. Instead of it looping around, I want it to stop at frame 1 and not morph until I hit the button. So rather than trying to write code for it to do this, I can do what's called code snippets. So under Window, you can open code snippets, and it's this little pieces of code that you can just choose. And eventually, when you get good, you can write it yourself, but you can also just keep doing this. So don't choose anything in ActionScript. This is from Flash, and this won't work in any more web pages. Everything has to be in HTML5 canvas. So you can open up that folder, and we're going to do some timeline navigation. We want to navigate the timeline. We want to stop and then go play somewhere and all of that. So this is the first folder, timeline navigation. And you've got stop at this frame, get a current frame number. We don't need that one. Click to go to a frame and stop, click to go to a frame and play. I mean, really just the stop and click to go and click to stop can do a tremendous amount of interactivity. So the first thing we want to do is just stop at this frame. Don't do anything. So I double click it, and it's going to do anything. Come on. Double click. There it goes. I don't know why it's not interacting there. It opens up my actions window and it writes some code. Now, what it's given me here, it's given me some explanation that are in these slash asterisks, which means it's not read by the machine. And the only thing it actually wrote was this dot stop and a couple of parentheses and a semicolon. So that's all. That's what it had to write. And when you get good at it, you can just remember to write that yourself. So it's going to stop at that frame. And let's test it. So I'm going to hit Command Enter. And this is what it does. Instead of looping around, it just stops. Great. Now I just need to tell it to go and make that morph happen if I click it. So I have to let it know what I'm going to click in order to do this. And also, you should also look at your timeline here. Whenever you start writing code or start clicking on the code, it'll make a layer called Actions with a capital A, and you'll see a frame with a little A on top showing that there's an action at that frame. So it does that for you. You could do it yourself too, but it's nice that it'll do that for you. So I want to click on the button and I want to make it do an action. And I want to start that code at frame 1. So starting at frame 1, that action will be active. So I have my this over frame 1, the playhead. Click that button. And what I wanted to do is when I click it, go to a frame and play it. I just want it to go to the next frame and play it. So I'll double click that. And after the stop action, it is going to say, okay, when you click this particular button, that's called morph button. Remember, we made that instance name. This is where that instance name comes into the code. It immediately tells you to go to and play frame 5. It just defaults to that, saying, well, go somewhere. And we don't want it to go to frame 5. Actually, we want it to go to the next frame. Now, you'd think the next frame would be frame 2. But in HTML5, and I don't know why they don't fix the timeline, it starts at frame 0 and then frame 1 and on and on and on. So frame 5 is actually frame 6, frame 10 is actually frame 11, and frame 1 is, you need to go to frame 0. So what I'm going to say, because frame 0 is where it starts, I want it to say, get away from that stop action. So go to the next frame, which is frame 1, because it starts at 0. So now in theory, let's see if this works. I'm going to hit Command Enter. And it should stop. But when I hit the morph button, it should morph and then go back, loop back around until it gets to that stop action again. So it'll do the morph and then go back to start. So let's say I don't want it to loop back around to that stop action. I want it to, and by the way, this little message that it gives you in the warnings, it tells you about what I just told you about how the timeline starts at 0 instead of 1. That's the main thing it tries to tell you every single time, and they should just fix the timeline. It's left over from Flash. So what I wanted to do is, after the morph, I just want it to stop there and not continue. Just stop at the new shape. So at that frame, if I would like to do this, I can put a new stop action so it'll stop there. So I double click on stop at this frame, and it puts this dot stop at that new frame. Let's test that out. Here it is, the beginning. Hit morph, and it stops. Hit morph, and it stops. Hit morph, and it stops. Let's say I want to go back to start, though, and stop back there again. So let's make it go back to start. So what I'm going to need to do is make a new button. That's going to be the go back button. And that has to be also on a new layer. So I'll click new layer. And let me lock some of these things here. I'm not going to lock the actions. It has to write new actions. Make a new layer. And I'm going to call this the go back button layer. I'll just say like go back B or something. All right, so that's where that button is going to exist. I'm gonna take the timeline, the playhead rather, back to frame 1 because I want that button to exist at frame 1. I don't want it to, because you can make things appear later in the timeline that won't appear before you hit that part of the timeline. But I want it to always be from frame 1. I want it to be existing. So on this new layer, my go back layer, let's make a new button. How should we do it this time? Let's do like one of the drawing or painting tools. Let's try the painting, a classic brush tool. That should work. Oh, that's a big brush. Let's close these windows out. Here's my brush. Here's my size. I can make it smaller. And right now it's at a black fill. I guess that's fine. So I'm going to just write go back and turn that into a button. So I have to take my selector and select where I wrote go back, get the whole thing, modify convert to symbol. It makes it a button, and I'm going to call it the go back B. Go back B. And remember to give it an instance name. I'll call it go back. So go back is an instance of go back B. That's fine. And what I wanted to do is when I click it, to go to frame 0 where it starts. So go to frame 0 and just stop there. Okay, so I click it. I go to my code snippets. HTML5 canvas, timeline navigation, go to frame and stop. Double click. It knows, because I had the go back selected, it knows that's what I was talking about. It says this dot go back, add event listener of click, yada, yada, yada. And I want it to go to the frame. It always goes to frame 5, just to give you something, some number in there. But I want it to go to 0, which is the beginning, and stop there. So let's see if that works. Okay, here we go. Morph. And it stops, go back, and it goes back. Morph, go back. Perfect, we're good so far. Okay, so the next thing that maybe we're gonna do is let's make it have a whole new scene. So something completely different can happen. And we're going to get rid of everything that we've got. So we're going to make a button to get to that scene too. So maybe I should make the button first. I'll make the button if it's going to be like the new scene button. So I'm going to lock my go back layer here, make a new layer. And I'm going to call this the new scene layer. In other words, fresh canvas. And let's make a button for that new scene. I'll use the pencil tool. We haven't used that yet. Okay, and I'm going to write new. You'll see that it's trying to quantize my writing. It's trying to make everything nice and straight. And by the way, that pencil tool, if you don't want it to quantize things, sometimes that's really useful. This is here in the pencil mode, straighten, smooth, and ink. So I had it on straighten, which is really the hardest quantize. It tries to make everything that's almost straight, straight, everything that's almost circular, circular, etc. I'm going to make it maybe the middle section of smooth. So here's a new, let's see if I want to make scene now. Now it just sort of smooths things out. That's nice. New scene. So I'm going to select this and turn it into a button. Convert to symbol. And I'm going to call it the new scene button. Great. And give it an instance name. Okay, new scene, instance of new scene. I guess they can be the same. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Let's code it. So now I want it to go to this frame over here, which right now there isn't any frame there. I want it to get past all my frames and just have a blank nothingness here. And that's at frame 34, which in fact is one less, 33. You always have to go one less. So I want to code that button, and I want to code it from frame 1 to go to frame 34 and stop. Sure, why not? We'll go to frame 34 and stop. So back to code snippets. Got the button selected, HTML5 canvas, timeline, go to frame and stop. And I want it to go to 34. Let's see how that works. Here's a new scene. If I click it, it should just give me like blankness. There's the go back, the morph. New scene. And it might be a problem that I don't have a frame there too. Okay, let's put something there. Let's put on a new layer my new scene. I'll say it's scene 2. Okay, and so I'm going to put it out here in the middle of nowhere land by adding a keyframe. And so now I've got a blank right here. I've got a whole blank canvas. And I think it's going to work since I have a frame there now. But let's bring something in there for this new scene. Let's bring in a picture. So file, import to stage. And that's how we're going to grab a picture. You can also import it to your library, and it'll put it in your library, which is a window here on the side, library. And everything you make gets put into that library automatically. But in this case, I want to go directly to the stage with it. So it's going to put it in the library and the stage at the same time. So import to stage. And I'm going to grab a picture right here. And it's saying it thinks it's a sequence, but it's not. So I'm going to say, no, it's not a sequence. So here's this picture. And I can make this picture bigger, for example, by clicking on the free transform tool right here, by dragging things out like that. So I'll make the new scene be this picture of this guy. And I'm going to put a stop action there so it just stays on him. So I'm at that frame where I want it to stop, which is the new scene. And this picture does not exist until I get there. And I want to put a stop action there. So let's go to that code snippets again. HTML5 canvas, timeline, stop at this frame. So now when I hit new scene, we should just see it hit that picture and just stop there. New scene, there we go. So I had the wrong number. It doesn't want to go out into space. It has to have a frame or it won't work. So that was the problem, because I only have frames up until what looks like 34, but one back means 33. And anything past that, it's not going to go there. And so that's why that code wasn't working. So it stops there at that new spot. And let's say now I want to make a new button that only appears at this new spot that's going to shrink this picture. So I have to make a new layer for the new button. And I'm going to leave the timeline playhead right here at the new spot. So I'm going to click a new layer, layer 6, and I will call it shrink. This is my shrink or shrink button layer, maybe. I'll put a shrink B. And I'm going to make a keyframe right here at this moment, because otherwise it's going to think that it exists all the way from frame 1, which is where the last keyframe exists. So I have to make a keyframe right there. So I'm going to right click and say insert keyframe. And now it turns that into a keyframe, which means something new can be there. So let's make that new button. I'll take some text, perhaps, and go to my properties, and I'll make, I'm going to leave it red text. That's okay. And I'll say shrink. And it looks like because it's below the scene layer, I'm going to have to move it upward, and now you'll see it. So whatever layer is on top will obscure whatever is below it. So that's a good thing to remember if you do something like this, suddenly don't see it and you're wondering what's going on. So now I already have this selected, and I'm going to turn this again into a button. Modify, convert to symbol, and I'll call it the shrink button. Great, and give it an instance name again. Okay, that's fine. And let's code it to shrink this guy. So if it's going to shrink, let's make that happen. So this guy is, where is he? He is here on my scene button. And so what I want to do now is make the shrink happen by making a motion tween. So I'm going to right click, and HTML5 actually, instead of liking motion tweens, it really doesn't. It likes these classic tweens. They seem to work better. The motion tweens may work okay too. Cannot be tween, I have to convert it to a symbol. That's fine. Let me convert this to a symbol. Convert to symbol. I'm not going to make it a button this time. I'm going to make it a movie clip because I just want it to do something. And I'm going to call it face. So the motion tweens or the classic tweens, either one of those, need your object to be converted to a symbol first. Okay, so now right click and say, oh, it looks like the classic tween is still there. All right, well, let's make a keyframe out here at 60, insert keyframe. Yes, and if I have a nice solid arrow, it means yes, there is a tween, although nothing happens here yet. I haven't done anything. So now at frame 60, I'm going to take my transform and I'm going to shrink this guy like this. And you'll see now what happens. I have to move the playhead. He shrinks. Now, if I don't do anything here on the actions, I mean, first of all, I have to make the shrink button work, but then I also have to make something happen here at frame 60. Otherwise, or else it's going to go back to frame 1 again because it's not being told anything new. So it's going to loop right back around. So I want to do a couple things. I think I'll put a stop action in there, but let's also code the button too. So here's the shrink button. So I'm going to click it. And I want it to go to frame 34, which is, 35. 35 is 34. Go to frame 34 and start playing to make the shrink happen. So go to my code snippets, timeline, go to frame and play. I want it to be 34. And then over here, make sure I've got nothing selected. Over here, I just want to stop action. So let's go to the code snippets again. Oh, they're already open. And hit stop at this frame. Stop. So that should work. I don't have any go back button, but it should work. Okay, so these are old buttons. Here's the new scene button. So let's click that. Here's a new scene. I'll hit the shrink button. Shrink and stop. So we'll just do one more thing. We'll just make the go back button stay there. That way we can always go back. And so that's pretty easy to do. You simply have to find your go back button. Remember, I was telling you can start to move these things into folders when they get to be too many. Where's my go back? Here's my go back button. Right now it only exists here up until this frame. But if I insert a blank frame here, insert keyframe, or insert a blank, no, insert a frame, just the frame. No, don't do these keyframes. Just insert a frame and it'll extend it out. So the go back will exist all the way out. It'll stay in existence. So we'll do one more try here. We got our morph. the go back, the new scene button, the shrink button with the go back that's still there. There's the shrink and the go back. So everything's working just fine. So that's some basic timeline navigation. Now you can imagine you can do all kinds of things. And in future videos, I will put like how to bring in sound, how to bring in video and move them around or change the color or make them fade in or out. But this is just basic button actions and making everything work properly. And it's good to kind of learn good practices with this, because if you do things kind of out of order or you put things on the wrong frames, things will stop working and it'll be hard to debug.